All right, so Ben Shapiro, noted fast-talking, hyper-masculine, big-brained intellectual of the right, had some things to say about Joe Biden's tax policy. And so I've talked about Joe Biden's tax proposals in the past and how they don't go nearly far enough and how historically they're not even high relative to rates that we've had in the past. But Ben Shapiro has a problem with even the moderate, half-assed, measured response from Joe Biden. And here's what he had to say along with some of his buddies over at the Daily Wire on this issue.
Screaming at the television when he's talking about taxes, because what he is saying is so obviously asinine. When he says that rich people don't pay their fair share in this country, that is just an abject, disgusting lie. It is a lie. The top 10% of income earners in this country pay all net taxes, not some of the net taxes, all of the net taxes, because net taxes are defined as what you pay into the government minus what you get back from the government. So if you get back...
A completely ridiculous way, by the way, to think about this issue. Net taxes, that's how you're going to define how taxes should work in this country, with absolutely no ability to have a nuanced discussion as to how certain taxes, certain tax rates affect people of different socioeconomic statuses. I mean, this is like the argument that somebody who believes in a flat tax would be making. I mean, because you're not taking into account how, the reason we have a progressive tax in this country, why people who are making more money pay a higher percentage to the government, is because somebody who's making minimum wage, who has, let's say, 30% taken from them, that's going to hit them significantly harder than somebody who's making $10 million a year, because the person who's making minimum wage might only be left with 15 grand at the end of the day, while somebody who's making $10 million a year would be left with like $7 million a year and obviously wouldn't be hard pressed. So if you're not going to have an analysis here that has any nuance whatsoever as to how these taxes actually function in reality for real people, then you're just giving a ridiculous analysis that is meant to do nothing but propagandize the people who you're listening to or who are listening to you.
Back from the government more than you paid in, this means that you were not a person who paid net taxes into the government. Only the people at the top of the spectrum are paying net taxes in this country. All of the net taxes in this country. When he says they're not paying their fair share, the only thing he means by they're not paying their fair share is it should be nearly all of your income goes to the federal government.
Yes, that literally is what I think it should be. That's not what Joe Biden is saying, by the way, because even his top tax rates that we're talking about in this situation, or that Ben Shapiro is alluding to in this situation, Joe Biden's tax rates that he's talking about are not nearly even close to a majority of your income, even though I do think that we should be taxing a majority of people's income. If you're making $20 million a year, or as some of these CEOs are making hundreds of millions of dollars a year, yes, I think that we should take a vast majority of that money. Why? Because we need to pull a certain amount of money out of the economy every single year in the form of taxes in order to reduce the risk of inflation. And so, yes, of course, if you're pulling hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars out of the economy and stuffing it into your pockets or shipping it to places overseas so that you don't have to pay taxes on it, or leaving it sitting around in your bank account, yes, I think we should take a lot of that money to be used for the public good. Of course, because how are you getting hundreds of millions of dollars? Well, you didn't fucking earn hundreds of millions of dollars. The only people who make that amount of money are the CEOs, the executives of these companies who make their money off of exploiting their employees. So yes, a large portion of that money should go back to serving the public good.
And when he says things like, I'm not going to tax anybody who's making under $400,000 a year, he is lying to you through his teeth. When he says I'm going to tax corporations, corporations are not human beings for purposes of taxes. The money...
Corporations are not human beings, you say. So I'm guessing then, Ben, that you would support getting rid of Citizens United, which treats corporations as human beings and says that they have the ability to essentially buy up our political system. I'm sure that you would be against, or you would be in favor of overturning that decision, right? You would be in favor of getting rid of Citizens United and treating corporations as corporations instead of as human beings, since you don't think that their corporations are human beings, right, Ben? No, of course you wouldn't support that.
Money that would have been passed on to you via income is being taxed up here. That money is now being withdrawn from the system and taken away from you. Corporations are going to have to raise prices.
Do you understand what he's saying here? He's saying his entire argument is predicated on the assumption that trickle-down economics works. That's what he's saying. He's saying if you raise taxes on corporations, well, that money was going to go into the pockets of the workers. Come on, if you just didn't tax them, then they would have given a bunch of bonuses to all of their employees, right? No, of course not. That doesn't happen. The money that we're talking about taxing these corporations is the money that they ship off to the Cayman Islands so that they don't have to pay taxes. This money is not going down to the workers. Trickle-down economics is a failed ideology. It's been a proven failure. If you look at any data, since Reagan took office and implemented this trickle-down economy and really made it take off, we've seen the largest upward transfer of wealth in fucking human history. Okay, we've seen corporations and wealthy individuals, the top 1%, as that one study from the Rand Corporation said, over $50 trillion over the last few decades has been siphoned from the working class to the top 1%. So this idea that money that we don't tax corporations on is going to go into the pockets of workers is laughably incorrect.
In order to deal with the taxation effects. When he says that I'm going to tax all of these rich people on their capital gains taxes, what do you think those rich people are going to do rather than put their money in the stock market where they get taxed on capital gains? They're not going to put their money in the stock market. So what happens to your 401?
Where are they going to put it, Ben? Where are they going to put it? Answer that question. Where are they going to put their money?
Okay, if you're a union member or a teacher's union member, what do you think happens to all the other 50% of the population who are invested in the stock market right now? And what happens to the businesses that hire you when Joe Biden decides that your boss needs to be taxed out of existence in order so that he can determine where the dollars go?
And by the way, this argument that he's making, this part of it, the implication of what he's saying is we can't afford to tax these corporations, to tax capital gains at a fair rate, because essentially these corporations, these wealthy individuals, own our system, and so they are able to put a gun to the head of regular working class Americans who do have 401ks, Social Security, all of these other things tied up in the stock market. He's saying because these corporations and wealthy individuals have a gun to the head of those working class Americans, that therefore we shouldn't touch the system, we shouldn't press these wealthy individuals because then they might sabotage your 401k. So what he's really saying is our system is so corrupted to the point where regular average Americans can't even try to tax these wealthy individuals and corporations at fair rates, or else they themselves will get fucked over. And by the way, he's talking about how many people are in the stock market, how many people have a vested interest in the stock market. Roughly 50%, roughly half the country has some vested interest in the stock market. But the top 10% in this country controls 90% of the stock market wealth. So again, what he's making the argument for at the end here is our system is so corrupt and dysfunctional and broken that we cannot even attempt to tax these corporations and wealthy individuals, or they're going to pull all of their money out and sabotage the vast majority of the population. So in other words, the vast majority of the population is simply to sit back and suffer the consequences from the whims of whatever these oligarchs want. That is the argument that he is making right now. And so let's go ahead and look at some of the data as to how ridiculous these arguments are. So corporations aren't paying their fair share. Wealthy individuals are already paying their fair share. Well, 55 corporations paid literally $0 in federal taxes on 2020 profits. These are 55 of the top Fortune 500 companies in the United States paid $0. $0. So if you bought a product from any of these corporations, like Nike, like a lot of these other ones, Amazon pays basically nothing in taxes. If you use their products, you are paying more in taxes on that product than they actually pay to the federal government in corporate taxes. So are they paying their fair share when they pay $0, Ben? Is that paying their fair share? Here's another statistic. America's richest, and this is from 2019, so I would imagine it's even worse now than it was back then. America's richest 400 families now pay a lower tax rate than the middle class. The 400 richest U.S. families now pay a lower overall tax rate than the middle class for the first time that's happened in 100 years. Factoring in federal, state, and local taxes, those ultra-wealthy households pay a total rate of about 23%. That compares with just over 24% for the bottom half of households. The U.S. now looks like a tax system of plutocracy. Yeah, exactly. And plutocracy, believe it or not, is not a fair taxing system, as Ben Shapiro would like to say. Here's the other point that really just exposes the entirety of the ridiculous nature of the argument that he's making here. We have had, the proposals that Joe Biden is putting forward on all of these different taxes, on the corporate tax rate, on individuals' tax rates, we've had significantly higher tax rates than what Joe Biden is proposing for basically the entirety of U.S. history, in recent history. Okay, so we've already seen higher tax rates than what Joe Biden is talking about, and Ben Shapiro is framing this as if the entire economy is going to collapse if we slightly raise them back up. So highest federal marginal individual income tax rate, I mean, look where we're at right now. This is only goes up to 2018, and I think it's even lower now. But I mean, really, this is where we're at. So raising it from basically here up to like here is what Ben Shapiro thinks that is going to tank the economy. Meanwhile, if you go and look at the golden age of the U.S. economy in the 1940s, 50s, going into the 60s, it was all the way up here. We can look at this again with the corporate tax rates. So look at this chart, 35%. So this is from 2018, 35%. Trump cut it down to 21%, okay? So the corporate tax rate is sitting at 21% right now. Joe Biden wants to raise it back up to 28%. Manchin wants it to only go back up to 25%. Look at our history. It has never been this low in basically entirety since World War II. Since the entirety of World War II, we have not had a lower tax rate for corporations than we do right now. And Joe Biden's proposal, do you see a single number on these wealthiest corporations here that is above 28%? All of them. Every single one is above 28%. So what Joe Biden is proposing effectively is not even just moderate, it's weak. It's not even close to enough. We should be going back up to those previous tax rates that we used to have, that were significantly higher than what Joe Biden is proposing. Why? Because corporations and wealthy individuals are not paying their fair share, as Ben Shapiro portrays it in that clip. And at the end of this clip, I mean, it gets even better. This guy who is talking to Ben Shapiro literally says that we need to tax poor people more. Let's go ahead and watch the end of this clip just to get a laugh here.
Jackass who's never created a single job in his entire life.
The people who don't pay their fair share in this country are the poor. We need to raise taxes on the poor. I'm not joking. I'm not joking. The poor in this country pay zero. The lower middle class in this country pay net zero. So we have a group of people who pay no taxes, a group of people who pay no net taxes, a group of people who pay all the net taxes. And his argument is that it's category 3 who don't pay their fair share. Fair share means your percentage of taxes. We've determined that there are some people who shouldn't pay any percent of taxes. The only fair taxing system is one in which everyone pays.
How do you like that? We should tax poor people more. We should raise taxes on poor working class Americans and cut taxes for the rich. I mean, listen, they're doing our work for us, okay? I kind of appreciate the fact that they're willing to come out and publicly make these arguments, because these arguments are incredibly unpopular. The vast majority of Americans disagree with this take right here. So thank you for doing our job. Thank you for making this so easy for leftists to come on here and explain how stupid and ridiculous your ideas are. And please keep advocating for raising taxes on poor people, because I'm sure that that's going to expand your audience. I'm sure people are going to love it. I mean, this is just absolutely hilarious, but also just complete garbage coming from the mouths of these people at the Daily Wire.